relatives of the Kennedy family, please stand and be recognized. Everybody. Thank you all so very much for being here. I would also like to recognize a few distinguished guests who are in the audience. From General Dynamics, the Executive Vice President, Marine Group, Mr. Rob Smith. Representing California's 48th Congressional District from the U.S. House of Representatives, the Honorable Darrell Issa. Representing California's 51st Congressional District from the U.S. House of Representatives, the Honorable Sarah Jacobs. Former member of the U.S. House of Representatives, the Honorable Lynn Shank. Former member of the U.S. House of Representatives, the Honorable Mel Levine. Representing the Commandant of the Marine Corps, Brigadier General Robert C. Fulford, Deputy Commanding General, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. Brigadier General James A. Ryans, Commanding General, Marine Corps Recruit Depot San Diego and Western Recruiting Region. Mrs. Evelyn Honey, spouse of James M. Honey, Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy. Captain Micah Murphy, Commander, Military Sealift Command, Pacific. Mr. Ton Carr, Military Sealift Command, Senior Owners Representative. The Chief Engineer for TAO 208, Mr. David Swan. Mr. Pat O'Toole, Honorary Consul of Ireland in San Diego. Ms. Dolores Huerta, American Civil Rights Leader and co-founder of the United Farm Workers Association. Our Trigger honoree, Mrs. Diane Bullbecker. Shore Removal honoree, Mrs. Jacqueline Carr. And Ms. Rosalie Calhoun, sponsor of the USS John C. Calhoun, representing the Society of Ship's Sponsors. And to the rest of our audience, thank you all for attending and your ongoing support of the men and women of General Dynamics Nasco. Now it is my honor to introduce our first speaker this morning. Please welcome the President of General Dynamics Nasco, Mr. Dave Carver.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Isn't she beautiful? Excellent. So the noise you hear underneath the ship is the last efforts to get the ship into the water, so don't panic because you hear the noise down there. On behalf of the entire General Dynamics Nasco team, it is my distinct honor to welcome each of you to the christening ceremony of the Robert F. Kennedy TAO 208. Secretary Del Toro, welcome. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, thank you. Welcome. It's our honor to have you here with us today. Being a ship sponsor is a tremendous privilege, and it's fitting that the Honorable Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, daughter of the ship's namesake, to carry that distinction for the service life of this remarkable ship. Kathleen, welcome to NASCO. We are honored to have you. Born in Greenwich, Connecticut, Miss Kennedy Townsend is the eldest of 11 children. She graduated from Harvard University and later received her JD from the University of New Mexico School of Law. In 1994, she was elected Maryland's first ever female lieutenant governor. Miss Kennedy Townsend is currently the managing director at Rock Creek Group, an investment management company. She sits on numerous boards and has received 14 honorary degrees, and she's a published author. You will hear directly from Kathleen shortly. At NASCO, we are justifiably proud of every ship we build, and each is equally special as the next because of one important factor, the ship's namesake. The USNS Robert F. Kennedy is the fourth ship of the John Lewis class of fleet oilers. The ship is as long as 2.5 football fields, coming in at 746 feet in length, and can sustain a speed of 20 knots or 23 miles per hour for more than 7,000 miles. That's the distance from San Diego to Brisbane, Australia. She can carry nearly 7 million gallons of liquid cargo or fuel, 9,000 square feet of dry and refrigerated cargo, and has the capability to replenish 3 ships at the same time. The USNS Robert F. Kennedy is an impressive feat of modern engineering. During an inspiring career that was tragically cut short, Robert F. Kennedy accomplished what some could only dream of accomplishing in an entire lifetime. Maybe it was because he was the 7th of 9 children and had to learn how to get things done in the face of adversity. He graduated from Harvard University in 1948 and in law school at the University of Virginia in 1951. After that, he wasted no time and jumped right into running his older brother's successful Senate campaign. For the next 9 years, he would gain significant experience working as chief counsel for several Senate subcommittees and conducting investigations for the Department of Justice as an attorney. In 1960, he managed his brother John F. Kennedy's presidential campaign, and after the election was appointed U.S. Attorney General. That's when Robert made a profound impact and left an indelible mark on history. As Attorney General, Kennedy took on organized crime and the mafia, and convictions rose 800% during his tenure. He also played a major role in helping African Americans win the right to vote, attend integrated schools, and use public accommodation. He later was elected to the United States Senate in New York, where he continued his advocacy for human rights and fought for the underserved. Robert Kennedy strove to accomplish great things, poured his heart and soul into what he believed in. He once said, "Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly." To piggyback off that quote, building this ship, or any other ship for that matter, is never easy. There's always an element of adversity to overcome. The fact that we are here today underscores the extraordinary effort the men and women of NASCO deliver day in and day out to accomplish great things. The NASCO team is comprised of a highly trained and skilled individuals. From design conception to delivery, we come together each day with one common purpose: to build and repair the finest ships that sail the high seas. As shipbuilders, the work we do serves a purpose greater than ourselves, and a purpose I know we all take enormous pride in. Currently, there are over 150 NASCO employees accomplishing the last task that will allow this ship to slide into the water for the very first time. Rachel Jekyll and Joseph Thompson are 2 of those employees working today. Joe is a supply chain professional, while Rachel is an engine room manager. Both have been instrumental in building this ship and have made a significant impact to their teams in NASCO. Rachel, Joe, if you could hear me, thank you for all you've done and continue to do. I would like to also thank the entire NASCO, Soup Ship, NAVC, MSC, and PO Ships team for their dedication and hard work. Without their combined efforts, we would not be here this morning. On behalf of the 4,800 employees of General Dynamics Nasco, I'm proud to present the USNS Robert F. Kennedy for christening to our sponsor, the Honorable Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Please welcome our next speaker, Mr. Stephen C. Cade, Executive Director, Military Sealift Command.
Speaker Emerita Pelosi, Secretary Del Toro, Ms. Kennedy Townsend, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm honored to represent the men and women of Military Sealift Command in welcoming our newest ship to the Combat Logistics Force. Like the other great American leaders, Robert F. Kennedy contributed much to the freedoms we enjoy today. A champion of equality who sought to eliminate disparity and close opportunity gaps that plagued our nation during his lifetime. We are very proud to be associated with and eagerly look forward to sailing a ship in his name. Today's global environment is crowded and contested, fast-paced, and competitive. USNS Robert F. Kennedy and the other ships of the John Lewis class are designed to meet those challenges. What sets these ships apart is innovation, a combination of capability, adaptability, greater capacity for dry cargo, freeze, and cold storage, more rapid transfer of fuel to underway replenishment ships, automation in hull, mechanical, and electrical systems, and quality of life improvements for our mariners at sea with increased bandwidth for communications. All vitally important to the work of our fleet oilers on station around the world today, resupplying and refueling our strike groups, supporting maritime security operations and deterrence, and important operations as exercises with our allies and joint partners. Examples include the Laramie, operating today alongside the Gerald R. Ford strike group in the Eastern Mediterranean, Yukon and Rappahannock, refueling ships of the 7th Fleet in the South China Sea, and Henry J. Kaiser, who just a couple weeks ago left San Diego to support the deployment of Carl Vinson's strike group. Robert F. Kennedy will soon join up to serve alongside them and other ships of the fleet to ensure our nation retains its competitive advantage in a competitive world. The greatness of this ship is only matched by the greatness of her crew. The christening captain, David Mirren, chief engineer, David Swan, proudly represent, and the crew proudly represent the thousands of mariners today at sea and the staff of Military Sealift Command who support them ashore. Our nation and our Navy is fortunate to have these Americans who step forward through the maritime academies, the union halls, the maritime industry, and other walks of life from all corners of the nation to serve in the United States Merchant Marine. They include pursers and cooks, machinists and electronics technicians, able seamen, storekeepers, communications and engineers, among many other specialists. And in the peacetime, conflict, or pandemic, U.S. merchant mariners have answered the call to service, demonstrating a deep and rich history of professionalism, seamanship, and bravery across the globe, whether defending their ship against pirates, preventing a cyber attack, delivering supplies to a nation in need, evading a storm at sea, or facing down an enemy alongside their Navy brethren. You can be assured American mariners will be there to safeguard our nation and our interests. To the team at PEO Ships, Naval Sea Systems Command, and GD NASCO, and the engineers, naval architects, and craftsmen and women who had a hand in building this ship, our nation is made stronger by your work. Thank you. And finally, I'd like to thank our ship sponsor, Ms. Kathleen Townsend. Today's ceremony seals the special relationship you have developed with this ship and her crew. You are always welcome on board USNS Robert F. Kennedy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cade. Next, please welcome Rear Admiral Brendan McLean, United States Navy, Special Assistant to Commander, United States 3rd Fleet.
Good morning. What a great Navy day. It is an honor and my privilege to be here today to join you for the christening of this great ship. Welcome to Speaker Emerita Pelosi, Representative Issa, Representative Jacobs, Secretary Del Toro, Mr. Steve Cade, Mr. Dave Carver, and the shipbuilders of General Dynamics Nasco, and most importantly, our ship sponsor, Kathleen Townsend, and the entire Kennedy family. Bobby Kennedy represents hope for a better future, a future of equality, justice, and unity. At sea, the USNS Robert F. Kennedy will be called upon to sustain a different type of hope and unity. She will be on the high seas, defending America's interests around the globe, going into harm's way to sustain our warships and sailors. We were all reminded of the value of a deployed naval force just 3 weeks ago, after the attacks by Hamas in Israel. At a moment's notice, our Navy was there, on station in the Eastern Mediterranean, living true to the axiom that when things go horribly wrong in the world, the National Command Authority's first question is, where are my strike groups? The ships of Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group Normandy, Thomas Hudner, and Ramage, joined by Bulkley and Roosevelt from our forward deployed naval force in Europe, immediately sailed from the Adriatic to the Eastern Mediterranean. Deployed alongside these warships is USNS Medgar Evers, a replenishment oiler just like USNS Robert F. Kennedy, supporting those ships with fuel, food, ammunition, parts, and mail. As Ford Carrier Strike Group carried out their new mission, the Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group in Norfolk accelerated their deployment and departed 2 weeks ago. Meanwhile, here in the Pacific, Carl Vinson, Sterrett, Kidd, and William P. Lawrence all rendezvoused just off the coast here to begin their deployment. And this is all while Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group continues its patrol in the Pacific, and the Bataan Amphibious Readiness Group operates in the waters of the Middle East. Like every week, for the last 248 years, our Navy is standing the watch. Navy ships all over the globe are operating to ensure the stability of the global order and supporting America's interests. Yet they are able to perform these missions thanks to the critical fuel, food, parts, and mail provided by the Military Sealift Command and ships like USNS Robert F. Kennedy. No other Navy in the world can simultaneously assemble and deploy such a combat-credible force in 5 different locations around the world, and more importantly, thanks to ships like USNS Robert F. Kennedy, sustain them indefinitely. In times of peace and war, we can be found on and below the high seas, in the airspace, and in cyber, so that our citizens and the global citizens who, like us, are committed to following the rules-based international order have the chance to live in freedom. It is ships like USNS Robert F. Kennedy who are the Navy's true competitive advantage over any potential enemy. The crucial enabler for America's ability to project military power for the past 7 decades has been the complete control over the global commons. This control is only made possible by ships who are able to remain on station, forward deployed, and combat ready. The only way to keep these ships combat ready comes with replenishment oilers like the one you see before you here. This ship is a monument to a unity of effort between industry and government that illustrates the remarkable achievement that is possible when Americans pursue a common goal. Today, we christen this incredible ship you see. And in the coming year, 125 of our nation's finest mariners will put her to sea. They will keep our Navy equipped, sustained, and forward deployed in order to maintain peace and the pursuit of all who threaten it. May the U.S. Robert F. Kennedy be the light for our sailors that Bobby Kennedy was to our nation. May God bless the ship, and may God bless America.
Thank you, Admiral. I'm pleased to welcome the 78th Secretary of the Navy, and no stranger to San Diego, the Honorable Carlos Del Toro.
Thank you for that wonderful short introduction. Good morning, San Diego and America. I will tell you that on any given day, there are about 100 places the Secretary of the Navy could be and perhaps even should be. There is no place more appropriate for the Secretary of the Navy to be than to be here today with the Kennedy family and all of you Americans to celebrate the incredible legacy of service to our Navy and to our nation. And so I am so proud, along with my wife Betty and with Evelyn Honey, the spouse of our Master Chief Petty Officer in the Navy, to be here with all of you today. And I hope that by the end of the weekend I can recruit a few more Kennedys to join the United States Navy. And I want to thank you, the Honorable Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, the former Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Maryland and eldest child of Senator Robert F. Kennedy, for your steadfast devotion as we have continued to build this ship over the past several years. According to naval tradition, a ship's sponsor's spirit and her presence guides it and its crew as long as the ship remains in service wherever she may sail, and even in harm's way, as Admiral McLean so eloquently stated. Mrs. Townsend Kennedy, ma'am, we are honored that you and so many of your family are here with us, and that you will forever be the the connection between this mighty ship, its crew, and your father's legacy of service and contributions to our country. To our Navy team and industry representatives here today, congratulations on another successful christening of a new ship of our fleet. I know for a fact, because I'm the only Secretary of the Navy to have ever personally overseen the construction of a ship as its first commanding officer, and I know the hard work that has gone into building this ship over the past several years. So thank you to all the shipbuilders, both here at the yard at Nasco and General Dynamics and across the entire Navy for the work that you've done. To Captain David Murren, the master of USNS Robert F. Kennedy, and your crew, thank you for your service to our military Sealift Command, a critical component of our Navy and our Marine Corps. By manning this ship, you will ensure that our fleet will have the underway logistics that these carrier strike groups so desperately need. And ladies and gentlemen, today, over a third of our fleet is actually underway. We have in the Pacific, in the Mediterranean, and in the Middle East, we have 4 carrier strike groups that are underway defending our national security interest. We have an amphibious readiness group in the Red Sea with 2,500 Marines on it being called to duty in the Mediterranean and elsewhere. I am so proud of our United States Navy. I will let no one criticize our United States Navy, and I am quite certain that if Joseph Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy were here today, they also would be proud of our United States Navy and Marine Corps. Congressman Issa and Congresswoman Jacobs, thank you both for being here. We obviously could not do our mission without the authorizations and the appropriations that you provide us on behalf of the American people, so we thank you to your commitment to our Navy and Marine Corps team. And finally, to Speaker Pelosi, ma'am, it is wonderful to see you here again. Thank you for your continued leadership in Congress. I was so proud to be in San Francisco with you just a couple of weeks ago, where we made you the proud sponsor of the USS San Francisco, one of our nation's newest Virginia attack submarines. In our fleet today, we memorialize our nation's champions who fought for the rights and equal treatments of Americans throughout our John Lewis class of fleet oilers. The ships of this class are named for America's civil rights leaders, Congressman John Lewis, San Francisco Supervisor Harvey Milk, Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, women's rights advocate Lucy Stone, who's the ship right behind us, and Sojourner Truth. And I had the privilege of, and Cesar Chavez as well too, madam. And I had the privilege of here just recently also being able to name ships after Thurgood Marshall Jr., Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and just a couple of weeks ago, Harriet Tubman. These women and men are what truly makes America unique and great. Each one of them dedicated their careers, their lives to the pursuit of equality and opportunity for all Americans, regardless of race, national origin, ethnicity, age, gender, or sexual orientation. Without their willingness to face injustice head-on with tremendous courage of conviction, progress could not have been made in making this nation indeed a more perfect union. Senator Kennedy knew the importance of progress and the preciousness of our democracy and our national ideals. He served in our Navy during World War II alongside his brothers, during which our Navy and Marine Corps played a critical role in liberating millions around the world from oppressive regimes that we see again today. As the United States Attorney General, he advocated for fundamental civil rights on behalf of African Americans and other minority communities across our country. And the United States Senator from New York, he continued to be a champion of those that didn't have a voice in our country. Senator Kennedy indeed committed his entire life to making our nation a welcoming and inclusive place for all, regardless of where we came from. As a Cuban-American refugee in New York City in the 1960s, Senator Kennedy was my senator. I perhaps could not have voted for him at that time, but he was my senator and was indeed an advocate for me, for my family, and my community. The opportunities that I've been given throughout my life were made possible because of the work that Senator Kennedy and others who used their positions, their voices, to advocate for the equal treatment of all Americans regardless of where they came from. This ship is more than a tribute to one of our nation's civil rights leaders. It is a floating symbol of our progress over the last 247 years and the ideals that we continue to strive for every day in this great country. As the USNS Robert F. Kennedy sails around the globe in support of our fleet, it will forever be a reminder of the determination to treat every American with the dignity and respect that they so deserve. And it will always serve as a constant reminder to all Americans that freedom must be defended by her shipmates and by all of us with the same passion and conviction as her namesake. And now it is my extraordinary honor to introduce our next speaker, someone who for decades, just like Senator Kennedy, has advocated for the rights of all Americans through her work in Congress, and today also serves, as I said, as one of our future ships sponsor, the USS San Francisco. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you someone who needs no introduction, Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, for your kind introduction, for your great leadership as Secretary of the Navy, for the pride you take in our men and women in uniform who serve our country and keep us safe, save our values and our great country. And your personal story is one that is the American dream. I was honored to be with you in San Francisco a week or so ago for Fleet Week. At that time, the enthusiasm of our men and women for your presence there was very clear. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you, Betty, for your leadership as well. What an honor it is to be able to be with the Kennedy family, the entire Kennedy family today, and our Madam Sponsor of the ship, Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, an accomplished leader in her own right. I represent San Francisco, been there 50 years, but I was born and raised in Maryland, where Kathleen, much later than that, was the first lieutenant governor woman, and she and I, for all those years, however mine came much earlier than hers, took great pride in the Naval Academy in Maryland. And so Navy has always been great. Bobby Kennedy served in the Navy in, 1944. The whole family has its participation. I bring greetings from the House of Representatives, from the Congress of the United States, with great pride, because as many Kennedys have served in the Navy, so many of them have served in Congress as well. President Kennedy, yes, his brother Robert Kennedy, his brother Ted Kennedy, Ted Kennedy's son Patrick, Bobby Kennedy's son Joseph Kennedy II, grandson Joseph Kennedy III. So when I see Darrell Issa and Sarah Jacobs and Mel Levine, who's there, and where's Lynn Shank, they have all served with all of these folks too, and another brother of the family, John Lewis. So again, we have seen up close and personal over time, historically, and in our own time, the great leadership of this family. Let me just call on Ethel. I know she must be watching from Massachusetts. Ethel, thank you for your patriotism, for the strength, for the beauty, for the love that the values that you've shared with Senator Kennedy, with Robert Kennedy. They love the sea. They loved our country. Yeah, they love the sea. If you ever visited them, you were going to be visiting on a boat, on the Resolute. And Ethel, thank you for this beautiful family, for the partnership that you had with Senator Kennedy, and for your own very beautiful contribution, your magnificent contribution to our country. It is important to thank our Merchant Marine. I didn't know this until we came for the John Lewis christening, that the Merchant Marine suffered the highest rate of loss in World War II of any of the services. So as you mentioned, Mr. Secretary, right there side by side with the Navy in supplying, so they didn't have to go back to port, in supplying what they needed. So let us salute all of our men and women in uniform with a special emphasis today on the members of the Merchant Marine who are going to be manning the ship. And I was so pleased that all of the presenters acknowledged the workers, our friends in the union movement who built this ship. Let us thank them for making all of this possible. Thank you, Brian Jones, for bringing us together here. David Carver, thank you so much for your leadership, and to NASCO, which for 6 decades has helped build the finest fleet to ever sail the seas. Thank you, David. Thank you so much. Now, others have talked about the history of Robert Kennedy. When we're christening this formidable ship, we are honoring the towering leadership and legacy. In him, you could see the future, vigorous, tenacious, committed to peace on earth and the well-being of our people. The name of the U.S. Navy ship, Robert Kennedy, is really synonymous with hope. Robert Kennedy knew America, and indeed the world, could be much better. And with his commanding rhetoric, he showed us his vision for a better future. I've heard him many times in New York or in Washington, D.C., but let's hear what he had to say in the rest of the country. I would tell you the rest of the world, but David told me if we don't end on time, the ship can't go because the tide will fade. Is that right, David? So if you think something was skipped, it's in the interest of the tide. On March 18th at the University of Kansas, he taught us that our nation can and should be defined by more than the GDP. This is a remarkable speech that he had made that was heard round the world. He said our GDP does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, the joy of their play, the beauty of our poetry, or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, the integrity of our elected officials. Neither would our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom or our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything except what makes life worthwhile. Said there, 3 days later at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, he called on each and every one to, and this is his quote, help everyone to help in the task of national reconciliation, to place our energies and your time and strength in the work of America, the building of a nation united not on every issue, but in the enduring faith that we are all to be free. And if we are to have a chance for a decent life, that the natural condition of humanity is not degradation, but dignity. This is the faith that binds us together as Americans. It is the faith that shaped this nation. It is this faith that helps preserve us. So when you think about how he went out there and spread this word of dignity and respect and the rest, in addition to hearing his wonderful accomplishments, you understand why he was so revered across the country. Bobby and Ethel had faith. They had faith in God, faith in family, faith in the future. And again, they had faith, which gave them hope in the goodness of others. Bobby talked about love and compassion. He talked about faith that gave us hope. Sadly, in Indianapolis, just a couple weeks after that, he offered a salve to a community in agony after the shocking murder of Dr. Martin Luther King. In fact, he announced to the crowd that Dr. King had been assassinated. What we need in the United States, he said, is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence or lawlessness, but love and wisdom, compassion toward one another, and a feeling of justice toward those who will still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black. Bobby was a bridge builder, spanning the deep divides of class, color, and creed to make us all very proud of our shared title, citizen. So when I was here for John Lewis, this is the class of ship that the U.S. Navy Robert Kennedy ship is in. John Lewis, we loved him, we served with him. As I mentioned, all the Kennedys and then others of us had the honor of serving with John Lewis, and this is the class of ship that this is in. And at that time, we all said what John Lewis said, which is, we may have all come over to America in a different ship, but now we're in the same boat. And that is, and when you think, I was told last night that when when Senator Kennedy was running for president in California that June, who went door to door to campaign for him? John Lewis and Cesar Chavez. Can you imagine opening the door and seeing them? Now the three of them have ships named for them. It is always wonderful when we start our events with our national anthem and we honor the flag and the rest. And I have this flag that I'm going to bring to Kathleen. It's what I gave John Lewis in my last visit with him right before he left us. He called, he said, I want to hear your voice again. So I said, you'll see my voice again. So I went down to see him, and I brought him this pin. And why I bring it up is because it's about Robert Kennedy and John Lewis and the Kennedy family. It's a pin that says it's a flag, and on it says, one nation, one destiny. Those were the words that were embroidered in the jacket of Abraham Lincoln the night he was lost. He probably wore that jacket every night, but nonetheless, in that, one nation, one destiny. Isn't that what Robert Kennedy was all about? This Kennedy family has been all about. So I wanted to make the connection between the class of ships and this ship, John Lewis, Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy emerged as a leader in a moment so important for our country. He never appealed to our darker side. Indeed, he was beloved across America because he always spoke to our better angels. And he was endlessly optimistic. As Kathleen has said of her father, she quoted him saying, "Tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of the world." May his powerful words ring in our ears and in our hearts and inspire action when we see this mighty ship sailing the seas, leaving behind a Robert F. Kennedy ripple of hope. May God bless the United States ship, Robert F. Kennedy, so it may always find fair winds and following seas. May God bless the U.S. Navy ship, Robert F. Kennedy, so it may always, always keep the peace. May God bless the brave men and women of the Merchant Marine who will serve aboard it. Thank you, Kathleen Townsend, for your leadership, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I'm getting the word that the ship is about to go, so we're going to have to take Kathleen up to the Stryker platform. But everybody come back, because Kathleen, you're going to do your speech after. So let's get up to the Stryker platform. This is how it goes.
Yes, ma'am. Of course. Catherine, I think we need you up there.
For the United States of America, I christen thee USNS Robert F. Kennedy. May God bless this ship and all who sail in her.
You got it. You got it. Okay, we're gonna help you out with that one.
Push, push. There it goes. I see it. And we have christened and launched the USNS Robert F. Kennedy TAO 208. That was fun. A little high drama there. No, was she just, well, at first they were giving me the, we're good, extend it, and then all of a sudden they went from this, which is like going to, like that, like in like. If everybody could take your seats, we're going to hear directly from our ship sponsor.
pushed it, did it? You gave that last push.
Nothing like a little high drama for you. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our ship sponsor, the Honorable Kathleen Kennedy Townsend.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sit down, please. Thank you so much. As you can imagine, I had to practice a lot yesterday to figure out what to do. And I was told that we needed to give sweetness to the ship before it went into the salt water. So that was the point of the champagne. This has been a very, very special moment, and it came after an enormous amount of work. Speaker Emeritus Pelosi, thank you so much for coming. Your presence has made a so big difference to us. You've been, and your family's been such a great friend of our family for, I was telling somebody, over 60 years. So thank you. You know, her father helped President Kennedy be elected president, so it's been a long time. So thank you very much. And Secretary DeToro, thank you very much. I love that you, our family has a special relationship to Cuba. Some of it good, some of it not so good. And I'll leave it at that. And I want to thank each of you here today. Admiral McCain, Mr. Carver, Captain Marin. We're going to see a lot of each other. He's promised a Kennedy room, and there's a big family. You've just seen a part of it here today. And they love sleeping on your ship. I want to say on behalf of my mother, Ethel Kennedy, and our family with us today, Bobby and Cheryl, Carrie, Chris, Sheila, Rory, Megan, Billy, Bobby, Amaryllis, Cara, Mariah, and Kate. Have I missed somebody? Max, Vicky, thank you. I'm always missing somebody, and that's been always pointed out to me. I want to thank the women and the men who built such a superb ship, and to each of the sailors whose skills will ensure that the Navy will meet and exceed its goals. I will devote most of my remarks to civil rights. But first, I want to acknowledge, as has been said before, how important the Navy has been to our family. Our grandfather, Joseph P. Kennedy, ran the Fore River Naval Shipyard in Massachusetts during World War I. Our Uncle Joe was a Navy lieutenant aircraft pilot, killed in action in World War II and awarded the Navy Cross. Our Uncle Jack was a Navy lieutenant as well, who saved his PT-109 crew in the South Pacific during World War II, and was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps medals. And one of the high points of his presidency was his decision during the Cuban Missile Crisis to set up a naval blockade, which helped avoid a nuclear holocaust. Our father, Robert Kennedy, also enlisted, and like many sailors, learned the values of the Navy: patriotism, service, courage. More recently, our sister Rory produced a documentary of the last days in Vietnam, where she showed how the Navy saved thousands of Vietnamese as they tried to escape. The Navy is a fighting force and a force for peace. It is especially appropriate that Secretary Mavis decided to name the Navy's fueling ships after civil rights leaders. The Navy relies on the fuel, food, and medicine that these fueling ships bring to the sailors and the ships so that they can fulfill their mission. And our nation relies on the fuel that civil rights leaders provide by their sacrifice, devotion, and vision so that our nation can fulfill our mission to establish justice and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. As Attorney General, our father devoted himself to the cause of civil rights. He opened up the University of Mississippi and the University of Alabama to Black Americans. He's raised money for schools in Prince Edward County, Virginia, when the school board closed those schools for 5 years rather than integrate. He recruited black lawyers to the Justice Department and brought hundreds of civil rights cases across the country. And as senator, he fought for the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. He was the only person in the White House who pushed President Kennedy to call civil rights a moral issue. And he stood side by side with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Please stand up, Dolores. As they demanded justice for farm workers. Each of these achievements comes with many stories, and one I think is particularly relevant today. In 1962, James Meredith was the first black man to enter the University of Mississippi. Despite President Kennedy and my father's 22 calls to the governor pleading for peace, peace was not to be had. 2 people died, 200 were injured. President Kennedy had to federalize the National Guard and called in the federal troops. 4 years later, the Ole Miss law students wanted the people of Mississippi to know the truth of those conversations, which were not known to the people of Mississippi. They thought our father would be the best person to tell that story. They invited him to speak at the law school, and all hell broke loose. The paper said he should be disinvited, that he was a traitor, that the wrong Kennedy had been shot. The chancellor, in fact, asked the dean of the law school to disinvite him. The Board of Regents voted 5-4 to allow him to speak. Because of the controversy, the speech, which was originally scheduled in a small room, had to be moved to the basketball stadium so that 5,000 people could actually come and hear him. When he walked in holding my mother's hand, the crowd in Oxford, Mississippi gave him a standing ovation. They may not have agreed with him, but they admired his courage just for showing up. In his speech, he said that the challenges of racial justice was faced all across America, and that it was young people who could shape the world in which they wanted to live. At the end of the speech, another standing ovation. In the question and answer period, he made his audience roar with laughter as he described his discussions with the governor, who was then just interested in theatrics rather than having peace on the campus. Again, a standing ovation. Civil rights leaders have as their goal a civil society. Daddy, like all of us, grew up pledging allegiance to our flag. At the end of that short and powerful verse is the notion that at our best, we are part of a nation that is indivisible. Every day, we need examples of people who live up to that simple notion. People who go soft on someone who offends, finds common ground with others where there appears to be none, uses laughter instead of yelling. Today, We can hardly imagine speaking to places where we are not welcome or welcoming people with whom we disagree. My father's visit to Old Miss demonstrated the qualities that he learned in the Navy: courage, patriotism, service. And those qualities fueled the same qualities of others: the people who invited him and the people who showed up and listened and applauded. As my father said in Cape Town, "Man stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope. And crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current that can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance." The Robert Kennedy is a fueling ship, named for a man who fueled courage, patriotism, service. In your capable and courageous hands, may the Robert Kennedy live up to her namesake and help the Navy stand up for American ideals, strike out against injustice, and build and preserve that current of hope that will sweep away oppression and resistance and bring that peace that we all wish for. God bless you.
Thank you, Kathleen. You know what, let's hear it again for our sponsor and the entire Kennedy family. Thank you. Captain Murrin, Dave, can we back the ship up and do that one more time? That was a blast. So on behalf of the men and women of General Dynamics Nasco, thank you for attending the christening and launch of the USNS Robert F. Kennedy. Special thanks to the entire Nasco christening team for a job well done. This concludes our ceremony. Thank you all for coming. I wish you all fair winds and following seas. Have a great day.
Thank